Today's episode of the We Are All Dying podcast is an example of how, when people have conversations around death, loss, and grief, we get to know each other better. And in this conversation, I get to know my new friend, Ron Sparkman, also known as the Cosmic Nomad on Instagram. I get to know him better and his story. And, you know, when I met Ron and I was seeing all these wonderful things he was doing, I had no idea that loss, grief, and death were part of the undercurrent of who he is today. We have a remarkable conversation about identity and how that can change. Ron shared with me how he found out later in life who his dad was and how the identity of his dad influenced his own place in this world and, you know, even allowed him to look back at his childhood in different ways and look forward in his adulthood. We talk about the experiences of men and grief and how the patriarchy plays a role in that. It is such a wonderful conversation, and it's not really with the intention of talking about any one thing. It's just saying, hey, friend, can we talk about death? And let's see what comes up. That for you. Okay, so we're here to talk about death, among other things, which is life
Oh,
and how they all weave together. And I don't know if you can remember the first death in your life, the first time you even, were told or it was explained to you that death exists. Can you remember kind of like when you were a child or even a teenager and this
and
realization came to you?
yeah, the first time that death mattered for me was when my uncle passed away when I was a teenager. And it was just it was one of those crushing things. You know, it was my cousin's father, it was my mom's brother, it was my aunt's brother, it was my grandparents' son, everybody else around me seemed to be so much more closely connected to somebody that I felt pretty connected to. But I just remember it hitting me really hard, and also there was sort of this kind of mask of masculinity type thing where it's like I've got to be strong for everybody, so I didn't want to cry and I wanted to make sure I could be there for everybody, and I didn't really feel the grief of the thing at the time. Something that my mom actually called me out on, which was really interesting. My mom had a tendency to be very particular about who she showed her emotions to. And I didn't see her cry a whole lot. And so she got really upset by this. And all of a sudden, I was supposed to be upset by this, which is something I hadn't had a model for. So that was a really interesting dynamic for me. And yeah, my uncle was great. And I think had he lived longer, especially when I was a DJ and I started getting tattoos and traveling and stuff, I'm sure we would have done a bunch of things together. And we probably would have gotten to some nonsense. But yeah, I think that was the first one that really made me go like, oh wow, some people that really mattered to me can go at any time. Like this can happen. He was only a couple years older than I am now, which is really weird to think about. Now
Yeah.
that I was like, he felt so old, and now he was like 47 years old. It's like, oh,
Yeah, it's so wild, eh? Like as you get older and you just think like it could be any day now because you know people who've died younger than you, around the same age as you. Do you remember how the adults or your family kind of talked about his death, maybe like weeks, months, years after? Was it something that people brought up again to reminisce, or was it something that you didn't really bring up?
yeah. I think one of the reasons that it hit us so hard was because it was in the holidays. So it was right around Thanksgiving. Can't remember the exact date, but there was no getting away from it, after that. And that was, the late 90s. So I was young. I had half my life left with my grandparents and so many other people. So it was something that hit us pretty heavy. And it was a really sad story at a very young age. He had gone to the Vietnam War. So that was something that it kind of affected. He never like really kind of came home from that. Like he lived the other half of his life, but it was a very difficult thing after that, which happened to I think to a lot of veterans. Um, and so yeah, there was definitely this hole once that happened. And I mean, I see his son, who's my cousin now, and I just look at pictures of him. I'm like, my God, you didn't have a child, you had a clone. He looks so much like him. It's even named him after him. So he's Norman Jr. So yeah. But he definitely was and still is a presence in all of our lives. Those of us that are left to still remember him.
Yeah. Has there been any, especially, with his son, trying to like piece together his life or like learn more about him as time has gone on, or how have you found in your own life that, once someone dies, there's this continuation of their story, whether it's past stories or or the relationships that you have. Is that kind of a theme that's been reflected in your life and how you
Mm.
live?
Oh yeah. I think mm, so one of the things that was really special is that uh Norm Jr. and I had not really connected since that happened. That hit him so hard. And we've had a really lovely chance over the last about year and a half to reconnect for the first time. So again, half of our lives, ago or more than that. And just to talk to him in a similar way of, with me losing my mom and never knowing who my father was, we both have this father wound. And I don't want to speak for him, but I think it's also led us to have some really great conversations that I didn't think I would really have with people in my family, especially, with the men in my family. My grandfather was pretty open, but he was really the only man outside of my uncle. And I lost my uncle so early, so I didn't really know what it was going to be like when we started sitting down. And man, we've both been really open with each other. So that's been really interesting to have this theme of like there's kind of death looming over us. My mom was 61 when she died. His dad was in his, late 40s when he died. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things.
Are
Sorry.
you comfortable sharing about the death of your mom?
Oh yeah. So 11 years ago, in January, uh, we took a trip to London and Paris, and it's one of the reasons that Paris is so special to me now. And from what I could tell, she was ill, but it was more like her knees were really bad and she was on a walker and she really needed to be in a wheelchair. And she was being really stubborn about that. And so whenever one of the things we did on this trip is we went to the Louvre. And while we were there, they gave her a wheelchair. I was like, wow, this changed everything. So it's going to be one of those moments for me that I was like, all right, my mom's probably going to have to be somewhere close to me very soon and need to be in the first floor. Like there's going to be care that needs to be given for the rest of her life. And again, in the early 60s, it hit pretty early. And then 6 weeks later ish, um, anniversary's in 2 weeks. Just out of the blue, she was gone. Got a phone call one morning from a guy that I worked with. He was actually a manager at the club, and I was like, "That's really weird. Like, why would you call me in the morning? We don't even, we don't have a day shift where I'm at." And he's like, "Yeah, your aunt's been trying to get a hold of you." And so she was just gone. It says natural causes. There were some things that were going on with it, but that was such a shock because it was just nothing that I'd ever really sat and thought about. I knew that she wasn't invincible, and no one is, but her mom and dad lived to be in their 90s. My grandparents, and it was just not anything that I expected to have come so fast. And it hit me at such a strange time too, because a little less than a year before that, I had found this really kind of epiphanal moment where I was watching a TV show called Cosmos, and I fell completely in love with space, and it completely changed the way that I saw the world, and it made me really curious again, and passionately curious, as Einstein said. It made me want to travel and see the world. It made me want to do all these things, and it was also when I lost my religion. So the first person that died as I had become an atheist was my mom. And so
Wow.
there was this thing where everybody around me was like, she's in a better place now. I'm like, I don't believe that. Please stop saying that to me all the time. That makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't believe what you do. But for me, it was one of those pieces where to sit with and say, I've got one shot at this. Like, I'm an atheist and I'm also agnostic. It's like the thing is, I don't know. I don't know for sure one way or the other. But what I do know is I've got right now. So what can I do from that? So that was when I really started doing more traveling the world and wanting to see more things. And I started traveling with some of her ashes and taking those with me and spreading them in different places around the world. And that was a really impactful moment. I don't know, like those two things kind of coinciding with each other fundamentally shifted the way that I look at life and the way that I see the world for sure.
Wow. Did you travel together much before? Like I know you went on that trip, but was it something that you regularly did?
Yeah, so it was definitely something that she instilled in me at a very early age. She loved to travel, and she put, I believe, a lot of, if not all of her life on hold to have me. And so that was one of those things that whenever we could do that. And she also was big about it whenever I said, "Oh, I want to go check out this new place. I want to go to this new thing or whatever." That was very big for her, and she also really loved photography. And so to get that chance to be able to go with her. We had just split on a brand new camera for her for Christmas. I paid for half, she paid for half. And so this was the first trip that she had really had with it. And then a couple weeks after that, it became my camera. So there was this weird thing of like this thing that we bought together. Now I'm going to travel and use this one for a while. And yeah, so that was one that she passed on the travel bug. She passed on the photography bug to me. And I have a tendency to want to do that on her special, the birthdays, the anniversary, when she passes Mother's Day. I go out to some beautiful place where she loved to shoot butterflies and capture moments in the botanical garden and say like Cape Town, South Africa is absolutely, it's gorgeous. It's actually facing one of the world wonders, Table Mountain. It's called Kirstenbosch. It's beautiful. There's butterflies everywhere. It's just this really beautiful vista. And just to go out with a camera and just enjoy the afternoon. And like there's a concert playing in the background on the other side of the park. Those kind of things, because for many years it was, I just get really depressed on those days. I drink, and this was before I got sober, drink, do drugs, the whole thing, and just get myself into a depression. And wouldn't let myself feel the grief. But now to just sit in a beautiful place and shed some tears and also, just enjoy it and celebrate our life has been something that has definitely helped me cope and better, I would even say appreciate the grief of losing the most important person in my life.
Yeah. Wow. Are you an only child? Were you her only child?
Yeah, I was her only child. As far as I know, I'm an only child, but I never met my father, which is a whole other like thing. Yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. So yeah, that was it. It was just me and her growing up, and like my grandparents and my aunt specifically were around all the time. We stayed with my grandparents when I was younger, and I'm extremely close. Me and my aunt talk literally every day. And so we had a very small but a very close-knit family. So yeah, but it was rough, It was we always were talking about anything and everything as I became an adult. We had a more adult relationship of just like it was a friendship and a connection and like still also with her, like me and my mom, there was a lot of, just yeah, talking about the shit of life, the things that I never thought that we would ever talk about whenever I was growing up. I'm like, oh, I put her on a pedestal that I need to put her on. She was just as human as anyone else, and I got to see a lot more of that when I was an adult, even more so after she passed away. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so how would you say your experience or your relationship with grief and death has evolved over this really significant one in your life?
Mm, that's a really good question. Um, I think I used to try and push it away. I used to give feelings a good or bad connotation. Like, oh, happy, I can feel that. That one's okay to feel. And grief is something that I'm not allowed to do. That's part of, the patriarchal nonsense of the man box of, I can't feel my emotions. I can't ask for help. But now, though, it is saying I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling grief. I'm feeling sadness. And if I didn't feel grief or sadness about at this moment, let me just gesture broadly at the world of all these things that are going on, then I should be worried about what is happening. If I'm not concerned about, I spent a lot of time in Africa and there's at least three genocides going on there that I know of. Not to laugh at that, I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much there. And the algorithm, every time I jump to a country, changes. And I see a whole lot more of something than I really had any idea about. I had no clue really until a couple of years ago what was happening in Congo until I was close enough when I was in Africa to start seeing like, oh my God, like what they're doing in these mines and how young these people are that are building us stuff for, getting the raw materials for our cell phones and iPads and so on. That really kind of shook me. So to sit with those things and really understand them and then see what that means to me. Why am I feeling grief about these things? And how can I sit with that and deeply connect with it? And then fucking do something about it. So that one's been a big one for me because forever it was just I wouldn't allow myself to feel grief, and now it is something that is a huge part of the human experience. So I try not to push it away unless I'm in public. If I'm on a plane and I'm watching a really sad movie, which I have a tendency to do, or I'm listening to a book, like I don't know, a year ago I was on a plane and I was listening to the first Hunger Games book. It was a part where, spoiler alert, one of the main characters dies. And I start crying on the plane, and it's a packed plane. I'm like, what have I done to myself? I can't get away from this. I'm just like holding my face like to the window, just like silent, like quietly sobbing at the death of Rue, as if I've not listened to this book 15 times. So yeah, those things like sometimes there's a little less opportune moments, but yeah, I try to be with it whenever it's there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I'm hearing is even just the deeper human experience that you have when you finally do face grief. And I've been thinking a lot lately about the world and
Mm.
gesturing all of the things, the genocides, the harm, all the systems, and how, and then looking at grief and how when we don't feel grief, when we don't move through grief, it shows up as anger, as violence, as separation. And these are all things that are kind of antagonizing these awful things that are happening. And I had this thought like, do we all just need to grieve? Because I cry every day. Like it's too hard today to get through any day, opening your eyes and thinking about anything that's going on and not cry. And I know not everyone's like that, but that's who I am. And that's how I allow these big things to not consume me. And I mean, maybe we just all need to cry. Like maybe if some of these people who were so violent could just get their grief out, because we do know when we trace back sort of a lot of why these things start, it starts because of this sense of, wrongdoing or vengeance, or, I lived in Northern Ireland where, the conflict that happened so long ago is still very present. There's still this feeling of like we were done wrong, right? And we want to fix that. And so I don't know, I'm kind of just blabbing right now, but I wonder if any of that kind of speaks to your experiences as you've traveled the world and met people and probably heard so many stories about just these awful things of loss and death. And does any of that kind of
Mm.
speak to you?
Oh no, I mean I deeply appreciate that point. So kind of to that, the very core of it is I think something that we have a tendency to ignore in the world is that almost everybody that is causing an enormous amount of harm had an enormous amount of harm caused to them. I did a program with this really incredible group called Success Stories Program, and I found out about them through a podcast, and it was also a documentary called "The Feminist on Cell Block Y," and it was about men in prison who had been gang members or white supremacist skinheads, any number of things that were trying to deconstruct and reform themselves because the prisons weren't doing that. And they were doing it through different feminist principles, and using you've never heard of it, or people that are listening have never heard of it. It's a book by Bell Hooks called The Will to Change, and it's huge in the men's workspaces, healthy masculinity, anti-patriarchy, harm reduction, talking about like what it takes to see how the patriarchy has indoctrinated us into. Oh, there's a really great line that I'm blanking on right now, and I feel really bad about it. But basically, it is forgive me, Bell. And it's the first act of patriarchy that of harm that patriarchy asks of men is self-mutilation. Self-mutilation, I think is what it was. And it's this idea that we have to cut off these pieces of us and not feel, and in dehumanizing ourselves, what comes from that. And as somebody who had a lot of harm happen to me and then caused a lot of harm in the world from that, and then to rehumanize myself once I was called out for it, like as I should have been, it's like what you're doing is hurting people. And to realize that and then start figuring it out, it's impossible to not see that in others. I'm I'm not a I used to be a huge fan of Elon Musk. I'm not anymore. And to see Elon Musk's father and who that man is and the awful things that he did, and then for him to be around it, like this is somebody that is extremely wounded, that has been through a lot. When somebody is willing to go online and say, please put on my tombstone, I never went to therapy or something like that, that kind of says a lot of it. There's a lot of that within it. So yeah, it is. it is poverty, it is trauma, it is all these things, and it is a function of that is causing so much pain in the world. And that's one of the reasons I think it is so important to for each of us to sit with that, especially men. Like it is, it's men in general, we're the ones that have benefited and also been completely destroyed by this thing. And most guys hear patriarchy, and part of the patriarchy is to hear, I'm going to take saying like we need to smash the patriarchy is that's an insult against me, that's an attack against me, because that defensiveness, that part of I need to be right about everything that comes from the conditioning and the socialization that we go through as boys that ends up being like, I don't want to hear anything about it because you're just saying it's wrong to be a man. Nobody's saying that. But what it is wrong is to assume that we're going to be in a place of power simply because we're men or anything like that. So, yeah, that's a deep topic that I feel pretty heavily about. And it's hard not to see it in traveling the world. Like, you are obviously somebody in pain. Nobody that ever, James Baldwin said, um, now I'm rambling. James Baldwin said, I believe was, um, for if I'm hungry, then you're in danger.
Mm.
Like if I'm in need and I don't have the basic needs of what I need, at some point I'm going to get desperate, and that's going to put you in danger. And that is just one of the most important lessons to understand that everybody has basic needs and care, and we all need that connection with one another. And there's just not enough of that in the world. And that
Mm.
comes from any number of the systems, from patriarchy, capitalism to colonialism. Yeah, so. I'll
Yeah.
stop there. I'll digress.
No, well, I want to give a
Yeah.
shout out to the group that you're a part of that is helping men to face the ways in which the patriarchy has harmed you, right? And continues to harm you and keep you separated from each other and from others and, from your experiences. Can you share a little bit about what that project is, what kind of work you're doing, and how have you seen it help men deal with those big feelings?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ones that I've been really fortunate to be involved in. So I'll name a couple of them. The first one that I ever did was with an organization called A Call to Men. And the basis of A Call to Men is, you know, the leader of one of the co-founders named Tony Porter, and he says, if women could have stopped violence against them, they would have done it already. This is like something like this is a men's issue. This is something that we have to be the ones to do. And so a lot of their programs are around men that either want to understand what it is that the systems that causing harm, or they have been someone like myself who's caused harm to others that no longer wants to do that and says, "Oh fuck, I didn't realize like I didn't really see what was happening here." And that was the kind of the first step into a number of them. And eventually it led me to a couple of different ones. Success Stories program is one of them. Inside Circle is one that is another prison-based program. There's a documentary called The Work Around It, where again, people that are on life sentences have done some of the worst shit, spent years in solitary confinement, have had the ability to do this deep personal work to look at where these core wounds happened. And almost all of them witnessed heavy violence, were sexually abused, had gone through all of these things, and turned from the victims into victimizers, as one of the men in the program talked about. Like, whatever this is, like I want to be involved in this. Like, I don't, it's like, do I have to like fly to California and go to the prison to do this? And I was listening to the podcast of that particular program, and one of the creators of it mentioned where he had the epiphany to bring this to prisons, and that was because he had done the New Warrior Training Adventure with the Mankind Project. And that is how I got involved with them and did my weekend. Well, 4 years ago, November was the first group I did with them about 6 months after I got sober and realized I needed to make some changes and or a lot of changes, fundamentally change everything. And I started doing some of their online groups and did it from there. And now I've staffed a number of weekends, and we met because one of our mutual friends is in leadership training in that organization, and he and I are really close. And yeah, it's incredible to see there's this assumption I think that men, especially men that are causing harm, like that they just don't care, that it's just oh you're only sorry because you got caught or these kind of feelings. When it comes down to it, is that in a moment where really having a mirror put up to us. most of us will say like, "Oh shit, I didn't realize where I got this message, and I thought this is what I was supposed to do." That's what the system is telling us to do. That's what patriarchy says. That's how we're supposed to act. I'm not supposed to feel. I'm not supposed to ask for help. I'm not supposed to. It's not that we're not being taught to be boys. We're taught to not be girls. I've heard that it said recently, and that's really it. It's to reject the feminine. Anything that can be gendered as feminine, emotions are gendered as feminine. And to see someone, a man that has needed to cry for every death in his life that he never let himself feel, or the kid that never got to play because a sport was a job by the time they were 6 years old because it's like dad didn't make it, so you're going to make it, and there was nothing to that. And there are very few boys that I know, very few men that I know that hears a term like man up, be a man, and don't hear it as anything but an attack. It's like that's saying I'm not enough. Whatever I am, I have to do more. And there are so many conversations out there about the male loneliness epidemic and that men are killing themselves 4 times more than women. And that like we're the ones that are committing most of the violence, 90 something percent of the violence. And to not see that there's got to be something to that, I think it's difficult. Like as a man, it's like, well, no, I don't really get what it is. When there are answers to that, there are any number of programs. There are dozens of programs, dozens of different organizations that are trying to change that, and men that want to change it. And I've never seen a guy. I won't say never. One out of 100 guys that come to the weekend, maybe like maybe this isn't for them. But other than that, most of them end up touching a part of themselves. They're like, oh my God, I just really did not know how much of myself I'd been missing by not being in connection with my feelings, understanding my grief. Yeah, it's a really powerful program, and there are so many of them out there all over the world.
That's incredible. And it's
Yeah,
something that, I would never look for that because I don't fit it, right?
yeah,
And so to hear that that's out there is something that I can offer to men in my life, right? Which I
yeah.
have. Like as soon as I saw Andrew posting about it, now I share any man that will let me send something in their inbox. I'm like, hey, did you hear about this? Do you know about this? Maybe you know a man, not saying like you, the man, needs this, but maybe you know a man and maybe it opens them up and you don't know how long something has to be planted for someone to step out and do it. And sometimes it takes something big, like a big loss, death, to move somebody to really face the things that have been in their way from moving.
It's sort of a recovery program for maladaptive masculinity, for wounded masculinity. It's the only real way that I can put it. I mean, again, I think any of them are, but it is another system of conditioning. It is another system of addiction to a level of power of well, no, this is the way that I'm supposed to be, and if I act and be this way as a man, then I'm going to get these particular things. And so many men feel entitled to that. They're like, I did the thing though, and I'm trying to be a protector and a provider. And what that means now in a world where we're slowly moving our way towards more equity, is that's not the roles. Like a man can be, if a woman can be anything, if anybody non-binary, if any number of folks can be whatever they want to be, then now we have to all find our own place. And for men, that can be a struggle because, like, I grew up saying I had to be a protector and a provider. Well, now what? What do you want to do, and how do you want to show up? And that I think has is shifting the culture a lot. And those are good questions to ask. Those are good things to want to know about, and to have the programs out there that allow men to say, "Oh, I maybe I should take a look at this," and to walk away from it like, "Wow, I wish I would have done that." Anytime I've ever seen somebody that's in their 20s, like I wish I would have instead of a bottle of alcohol and like too much cocaine, I would have had therapy sessions and like my medications, and then also like the men's work program. Like I would have been totally different life. But we get to it when we get to it, thankfully. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Yeah,
Well, I mean, at our age and as we're setting examples for the younger generations, and it's strange to think that we are not that younger generation because for so long that was us. We were the young ones. So now we're kind of like in the middle setting examples. Um, your dad, are you comfortable sharing the story about your dad, your journey, the grief around that? the complexities of the scenario.
Yeah, yeah, that was a really interesting one to so I grew up West Virginia, and almost everybody there, like to be a boy, it was to hunt, to fish, to camp, to be out in the woods, and to play sports. And I did none of those things. I had no interest in any of those things. And I'm sure had I had um, a man in my life that was there that was going to teach me about that stuff and maybe make me go do some things that I didn't want to do, that things would have probably been different. And so, yeah, that's one of the earliest wounds of looking around and seeing, you know, dads playing sports with their kids or going fishing or all these other things. Me and my dad, me and my dad, me and my dad, and not having that experience. And so there was a lot of questions for me growing up. And my assumption, because of how close to the vest my mom kept this man, she never told my aunt, my grandparents, her best friend, who was my godmother, nobody who this man was
Wow.
this assumption. Yeah, nobody. Like, imagine going, like, I can't even think about that. Like, a secret so big. There is so much I've shared with people, and no one knows. So the assumption to me was that I might be a product of harm, that something happened and she chose to have me, and I didn't know what that was. And when I asked, she wouldn't really, she told me she would tell me when I got older. When I got older and I asked, she's like, I told you when you were little and you must have blacked it out or blocked it or whatever. I'm like, that seems strange to me. So, I went through my life not really knowing or understanding that, or knowing or understanding myself. And the change came after she passed when my aunt got a DNA test and got one for herself and got one for me. So whatever she was and I wasn't, whatever I was, whatever we both were and she wasn't, whatever that is. Sorry, I'm just, yeah, I can't think of it. The right way to say that. No, I know it
The
sounds silly.
leftover DNA.
Yeah, whatever the leftover DNA in me was that she wasn't, then obviously that would be my dad's side. So I think everybody at home can figure that out. And it was pretty crystal clear. So on my dad's side of the family, I'm Afro-Jamaican with a little bit of Irish, and so that was to be as white presenting as I am. I never thought that that was a
And your
thing,
your mother was white presenting as well.
no, she was white, white. Like it wasn't white percent. She eats white. That's just like it was like Irish and Welsh and like everything from basically like the UK. So there was nothing there. And then on the other side, there's this. And yeah, so that was one of those things that now created a possibility of what actually happened was as that as a 20 late 20s something single white woman from West Virginia, she had at minimum a fling with a man of color while she was gone, and she was now coming back home to tell a very country, community that was around her that she was pregnant by a black man, and he wasn't going to be around, and she was going to raise me on her own, and she didn't know how black I would look whenever I came into the world.
Wow.
And so when it wasn't obvious, I think she kept it a secret because then it was if I go to school, you know, and I'm talking about these things, I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm black and I don't look that. Or the opposite side of what was happening in our community. When I was in high school, or I'm sorry, the year right before I started high school, there was one of the only black students in high school in my local area who had I believe it was his cat, not a cat, but his cat was hung from a tree. It became national news. Like that was the kind of things that happened. I'm still friends with the only guy that I went to school with that I believe I think he was the only kid that I went to school with that had two black parents. And I know what he went through. And that was the talented, popular guy. He's popular in his community and the stuff he still goes through. So I think it may have been as a bit to protect both her and myself that's why she kept it a secret. It could also be both. I just don't know, and that answer will never be fully revealed, I don't think. But being able to meet just a couple weeks ago, week before last, the first family member on my dad's side of the family was just this incredible thing. Just like brilliant guy, just super fun, nerdy like I am, and I wish I would have known him half my life ago, the friendship that we would have had and the times I probably when I went out there. And also I'm happy to know him now. If I never find my dad, it was worth it just to find, and talk to him. And I'm going to get to eventually meet his sister. Like I sent a picture and he sent that picture to the rest of the people in his family and that part of his family. So that's a really cool thing to say, like, hey, there is this whole other side that I get to know for the back half of my life if I get to stick around that long.
So do you know if your dad is alive?
No, not sure. So the family member that I met is he's a second cousin to me. And there's like some ways where that can be messed with within it because sometimes like second cousin or cousin can actually be like half brother or something like that. I can't remember exactly the weirdness to it. So we don't know exactly. He thinks he might have an idea who it is, but we're still kind of working that out. So he might be alive, I might be an orphan, or he might be out there somewhere. And he might be a great guy, and he might be somebody I don't want to meet. I just don't know. And it could be none of those things. So we'll
Yeah.
see. Yeah, I'm down for the experience, and I've also done enough work through this. That was a big piece that I had to address within myself was this identity thing of am I okay not knowing? Am I okay wondering that? And the answer to that is mostly I would like to know, and I don't know how much that's going to shift me. The understanding of where I come from and that sits with me a whole lot more than who the man is himself. But to be like, wow, it's like to be in Africa last year and go to a slave museum whenever I was in Cape Town and just be like, there's a difference between having empathy and compassion for people that went through that and then being like, oh, like if I go back a couple of generations on my dad's side to like a great great grandfather, like they were slaves taken to Jamaica, like on
Yeah.
ships, and like eventually they moved them to New York. So I don't know if they moved to New York on their own or if my family was moved from slaves in Jamaica to slaves in the US. So I just don't know what that looks like entirely. And that's a really that's an interesting thing to find out at 40. You know, to be like, oh, wow,
Absolutely.
that there's this other side of me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially to be if I get pulled over in traffic, this is my example that I share. If I get pulled over in traffic, I'm hoping that I can get out of that ticket and go home. I'm just like, oh, this is an annoyance. Whereas if the other side of my family, if somebody like my father got pulled over, he's wondering if he's going to get home from that, especially in a country like the US. So those kind of pieces were a lot for
Yeah,
like to reckon with over the last 4 or 5 years.
I bet. I mean, you probably never thought when you were being pulled over before this ever about because of how I'm identified, they're going to treat me. You wouldn't have even thought that because you didn't even know that about yourself. But do you think you've been racially profiled?
100%.
Yeah.
I was bullied to the point that I quit school. And when I go back and I look at those things, I was on a phone call with another man who's mixed. It's a little more obvious to look at him that he's mixed than me, but he's also very white presenting. And as I was talking about some stuff, and especially when I went through the DNA test and I saw what was on the dad side of my family of like the curly hair and the freckles and the certain things, I'm like, those are all the things that I got picked on for. And even the kids
Wow.
at school that were messing with me I don't think they looked at me and saw that, but like there was the being made fun of for my hair and being like either like said it being an insult, talking about my afro or my Jufro. It was either a racist joke or it was an anti-Semitic joke, both, those things to pick on those features about that. So I was othered, and while it is certainly not the experience, anywhere near the experience that my friends have dealt with, the overt racism there is still that like I was othered. And if I went through that, my God, what are these kids going through? What are these people going through that have to just go through the world experiencing that? And then I had to come to terms with my own internalized racism of the stuff that I grew up where there was nobody else around. There was nobody around for those jokes to cause harm to, really. Only a few people that I went to school with.
Yeah.
And that was in later age. So there used to be all these awful jokes that were going around through grade school and middle school that every kid was saying, almost every kid was saying. I don't want to put that on everyone. And especially, I mean, all the boys were saying. And to look at that and say, we didn't know what we were saying. Also, that stuff is awful. Kids can be cruel.
Yeah.
And to then know and understand that is just, that's brutal. Like, it's really how. I was socialized to hate myself and want to like to see somebody else with freckles and curly hair and think that that's ugly because people told me that that was ugly about me. I thought less of other people because of how little I thought of myself from what people had told me about me. So yeah, that is definitely something I've seen through my life that I've again through like doing men's work, doing the circles that we do with MKP, Mankind Project, being able to sit in a room and just be like, this is something I'm trying to come to terms with. And what does this mean for me and what does this mean for my experience? Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very unique situation that I think, in a lot of ways, you're able to see so much more than so many of us because of this sort of duality you didn't know existed within you. And then to now have the chance to sort of, be with it, reconcile, see how it affected you, but you didn't know. That is really, really unique and special. And, I don't know you very well, but it also, I think, it comes through in sort of how you're showing up in the world as well with this capacity for understanding for the lived experiences of other people and that we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know people's stories. Sometimes people don't know their own stories.
That's really it is, I think in particular too, I think there's a disconnection for I think for a lot of men to separate from the harm that's happened to them and the desensitization of that from like this hurt me and I can't feel it, and this physically hurt me and I can't feel it. This hurt my feelings and I can't feel it. To the point that after a couple of decades, we get to college age and we're just so trying to think of even the word for it, so apart from the world. And there's a reason why when most people talk about a midlife crisis, they talk about it's men's midlife crisis. It's there's a divorce and there's a sports car and there's an earring and there's like all this other stuff. And that's because at some point something's got to give. And until I love to see new generations. Some young men will come in on the weekend and then we'll start talking about some feeling stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, so whenever I'm feeling this, I do this and this and that. Like, wow, that's a whole lot easier to get to than the guys that were born in the late 1900s, which also makes me feel terrible. Like, there's people that are full adults, powerful adults, full adults, 25 years old now, that and born this century. Like 2006 was 3 years ago. What are you talking about? You're in the workforce. Get out of here. So that just that hurts my heart. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, just to see what that therapy, like the stigma of asking for help, the stigma of needing to do that, it's just changed so much, and that gives me some hope for the world. Then of course there's the opposite side with the manosphere red pill bullshit, which just
Yeah.
here. Yeah, I digress.
Um, do you think about your own death?
Oh God, yes. So before my royal fuck up and blowing my life up 5 years ago, I mean, like last week, 5 years ago, I almost died. I got COVID, and I got the comorbidities that came from half of my life of drinking and doing drugs and staying up all night and eating whatever I wanted to and doing all those things, mixed with this horror show of a virus that was going around, still going around. And my blood pressure shot through the roof and it got to like 236 over something. I was something like 50 points over what a lot of people stroke out and die at. And I drove myself to the hospital. And I was like, I just can't do this anymore. There's no way this can just be COVID. It's got to be something else. And I was in the hospital for 4 days, and it was a version of heart failure,
Wow.
hypertensive crisis that was brought on by it. And so there's not a day that goes by that there's not a like, ooh man, it's right there. And I think it's part of the reasons that I wanted to become a digital nomad. So many people, I'm gonna wait, I'll do that when I retire. I can't tell you how many friends I've lost. I just had two of the like main like these two people that were huge you know I wouldn't say influences, that's weird, but I would say to people that were celebrities in my youth with like James Van Der Beek. I remember everybody talking about Dawson's Creek, and he died, and he's a couple years older than me from cancer. And one of the rock bands that I remember discovering as a DJ and like playing all the time at a club was Three Doors Down, and the lead singer of that group just died. I'm like, what? Like we're all in our 20s still. What are you talking about? Mentally, my head's there. And there's all these people that, with all the money in the world, what seemed like all the money in the world, they're running GoFundMe's.
Yeah.
It is not tomorrow is not promised. And just a couple weeks ago, we did an NWTA weekend, the New Warrior Training Adventure weekend in Hawaii, and it was incredible. And part of it was a celebration of life for the man that had brought the project and the men's work programs to Hawaii. And the theme was Memento Mori, which is a term you probably know. Yeah, there. How could you not? And for those that don't know, and please, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is it's oh,
You will die.
remember you must die. Yeah,
Yeah.
remember you must die.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd been in Hawaii since my mom had sent me there almost 30 years ago. It was the first trip I'd taken by myself. It was for a martial arts thing, so I was with friends and people that could watch over me. But I've got the ashes with me, and I'm standing at like the fire that we have burning for the weekend. And I've got my Hawaiian friend on one side of me and my Mexican friend on the other side of me, and we're standing around this fire, and I put some there, and I'm just like having this moment of just I never thought I would do this, and if I wouldn't have gotten sober, I would have killed myself. And how many times I thought about it, or wanted to, as I've dealt with depression throughout my life. Um, so yeah, death is just ever present for me. And also it's like I think it's one of the things that makes it more precious. I think not believing in an afterlife, not thinking that there's anything after. Not, I mean, I can't know that. For me, it's just like this is it. Then I've got to make of it what I can. And so that has been definitely a huge part of this for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
And
have thoughts on what a good death for you would be?
have you ever heard the song "I Lived" by One Republic?
Yes, that's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's a few years ago. Uh, while I was doing like it was within the first few months of traveling. Just a bunch of crazy shit had been going on. And there were these two really lovely people that were part of the program I did called Remote Year. And they were a couple in their early 60s. And they had both retired and they were going to spend the rest of their retirement years traveling the world together. And one of the very first things we did in Vietnam was we celebrated their 50 years together. They hadn't been married for 50 years, but they've been together for 50 years. And the guy and I went out for dinner one night and we were talking about the struggle of what was going on with him and his son. And we were at this French restaurant and he would introduce me to like Iberico ham and it was just this really beautiful conversation. And a couple weeks later, I had a bunch of stuff going on. My passport was gone, and I was stuck in like as like a refugee in the Japanese airport, Osaka airport for like 30 hours trying to get into the country. All this other crazy stuff had been going on as I was traveling. It was a rough few months, the first few months as a digital nomad. And I had just gotten through this hell of trying to see if I was going to be deported, if I was going to be sent back to the US, and like that was the end of my trip. Just gotten through. And as I got through, I got to the hotel I was staying at. Me and my friend ordered a pizza, Kelly, and Kelly gets a phone call from one of the two people in the couple. It's like one of the couples, and we know that they're heading back home. They've been in Sydney. They were flying back to the U.S. to see their first grandson be or grandchild be born, and it was the wife of the couple, and she called to say that her husband had died on the plane,
Wow.
and in between Sydney and Los Angeles. It's a
Wow.
long flight
Yes.
to be with that. So, um, there was something about like the way that these two were doing. When we went out to the nightclubs and we were out till 2 o'clock in the morning, Lewis was there. You know what I mean? Like, there's a 4-day trip that they're going to do on the back of a motorcycle. Lewis was there. You know what I mean? Like he was so ready to go. And the crazy thing about it is that they hadn't planned for him to go. What I didn't know was that she had stage 4 cancer and she was in remission. And so one of the reasons that they
Wow.
were traveling the world together was because they thought that they didn't know how much time she had left. She's still in remission, now almost coming in on 2 years since he passed away. Just like this crazy,
Yeah.
crazy, crazy thing. And I think the most beautiful moment of that was the day of the funeral. Somebody had set up some camera stuff there, so that way the people, his friends, could see us around the world, the people that he had traveled with. And she gets on stage and she says, through tears, she's trying to get through it. She's like, I just want to let everybody know that on the way here, we got the phone call that the grandchild had been born on the day of his funeral.
Wow.
Like, that's some shit that if I were to put that in a book,
Yeah.
nobody would believe it. You're like, get out of here. No, no way. Like, absolutely the truth. It feels like a very special episode of Full House. That's what it sounds like to me. It doesn't sound real. And that's exactly how that happened. And so the type of person that when I hear a song like I Lived, Lewis was the kind of guy that I hope that people think of it that way is that, there was a lot of ups and downs. There were some really, really, really low lows. And from those lows, I tried to make the best of it and then make the world a better place once I knew it was like, oh man, I want to be more. I know that, um, that may not necessarily be possible, but I'm going to make the best of it. And you know what? I don't know what more that I can do than I'm already doing. Like there's some other things. I mean, I'm on like my fourth bucket list. Like I've seen 16 of the 22 remaining world wonders. Like, I'd like to get them all, but it's also just like that's just a checklist thing, in a sense, but it's cool to see those things, and I think it's just yeah, I don't really know like what death will mean, but I feel like I've lived the shit out of this life, whether or not it ends tomorrow or 40 years from now. I've seen and done so many things that I'm just truly blessed to have happened, and sometimes I don't even understand it. It doesn't feel like it's my real life,
Mhm.
and so that's a really cool experience to be able to have that. So yeah, I don't know what it looks like at the very end, but maybe I've got another 40 years to consider it, and maybe I just go in my sleep sometime and just that's what it
Yeah.
is. Well, guess we'll see.
Getting as vulnerable as you're comfortable getting,
Sure.
what is something that you want to do before you die? That's not something you could put maybe on a list or something you could visit, but is there like a human experience that would just really
Mm.
kind of like make this experience a lot sweeter?
Okay, so there's a big one for me right now that I really, really want to do. There's two of them that are big for me. One of them is um I want to do a road trip around Iceland. So one of my favorite movies and one of the inspirations for me, the last films that me and my mom saw together, that shockingly we both loved because we weren't the biggest fan of him, was the movie called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. So
Which I
that's
watched after I met you because I was like, oh,
okay.
I would never have watched that, but I was like, well, it inspired this guy, so maybe there's something to it.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that. I want to hear what you think about it. So I watched this movie and I was just I just loved it that this idea that man, how many people are just sitting around like waiting for that certain shade of green, to go live their lives, and he through pure terror and no other choice has to make a decision to, as my mom used to say, shit or get off the pot. And that moment just was a really big one for me in that film where he takes that first jump, and whenever my mom passed away, I ended up doing something crazy. I'd never really climbed or hiked or done anything, and I went and did the Everest Base Camp trek.
Wow.
And so the soundtrack for that movie was part of the music that I listened to. And the part before he hops on the helicopter, he's listening to um, uh, Space Oddity by David Bowie.
Yeah.
And so I've got that on and repeat as I'm going to get on this tiny airplane. By the way, at the time I was terrified of flying, absolutely terrified of flying. And famously, when the plane from Kathmandu to Lukla lands, people clap because it's one of the places that plane wrecks happen so often because you're flying into the Himalaya mountains and there's storms and there's all this. And so I'm listening to this as I hop on this plane, and it's just this really beautiful moment. And yeah, so that's one of the places where a ton of that, most of the film, like the exotic locations, were filmed in Iceland. So I want to do that. And then the second one is my mom never made it to Bora Bora, and one of the big things she wanted to do, and one of the big things I want to do is learn to sail. So I want to um, learn to sail, take a sailboat out off of Bora Bora, and take like a good chunk of her ashes and put them in the ocean there. Like I've traveled and taken her to like 40 some countries, but yeah, I would
How
like
many
to do
ashes
that.
did this woman get?
I mean, she was a big lady. So, well, the thing is I take little ones. Like I've got like this
Okay.
little tiny itty bitty one, and so I do. It's like this big, and it's got like a little cap, and I put just a little bit, and so I'll do just like almost like a sprinkling of salt, of like a
Yeah.
little bit of ashes, like to be like, that's it. So yeah, not a bunch. I'm not taking the whole thing. I just take a little bit at a time.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, part of
Yeah,
my funeral is
salt bay it.
I want to have these like little vials that everyone can get with my ashes and
Yeah.
then just like take them with you. Take me wherever you want to go.
That's quite literally what I said because I started doing that, and so many people were like, "I didn't even know you could do that." I'm like, you can't have a lot. You can't take.
Yeah.
There's a specific level of ashes that are illegal to take to most countries. But if you can take just a little tiny bit, and nobody's ever even looked at it. I mean, I'm sure that there's like a stipulation, like don't take 75 pounds of ashes with you, but if
You're
you
gonna
would
get
take just
flagged.
a little bit. And I fill it up twice a year. And so,
Yeah.
like, I know I've got to kind of separate it out of like, oh, here's a place that she would want to go, or I'm
Yeah.
whale watching and I know she loved the ocean, so I'll put a little bit out there. But yeah.
Yeah. Do you have is there a final place that you want to?
Yeah, Bora Bora is the big one. Like, I mean, it won't be like all of them, but I mean, I would probably, honestly, you know what, to say the truth, I don't even think that I would like try and ship like a large amount. I think it would probably just be whatever's left in the vial at the time
Yeah.
would be that one. But Bora Bora is not cheap. Like any of those islands. I just left Hawaii and McDonald's was 30 bucks. It's just
Yeah.
like those places are Easter Island. There isn't no McDonald's there, but everything is so pricey.
Yeah.
So the back of my head, I'm like, all right, just remember, it's not gonna be cheap to go to Bora
Yeah.
Bora. It's $1,000 to get there. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're coming from, unless you're coming from Fiji, which
Yeah.
is also $1,000 to get to. So yeah, yeah,
Got to plan it well. Um,
yeah, that's it.
final question, but then I want to
Sure.
keep you around for a little bit after. Any advice for the living?
There's a set of interviews that talks to people that are on their deathbeds, and almost all of them are the regrets of not, but the things that they didn't get to do, the things that they didn't try. I wish I would have jumped out of the plane. I wish I would have traveled more. And I often will hear, Tony Robbins is on stage and he's talking about this person did this and then did this and they traveled the world. There's a lot of that out there where the main thing is to travel and see the world. You do not need to be rich to do that. And I cannot say enough the experience of seeing other people's point of view and the ability to know that when it comes down to it, most of us are the same. There's so many places that I was afraid to go to that, it's like, oh man, like I don't know about Egypt and like I don't really know and I don't understand. I've been to Egypt six times now. I'll walk down the street at 1 o'clock in the morning there and not have a problem. I love to be there and just to see it, and that's pretty much what I found about the world. So there's more than enough stuff. Can always buy the new cell phone next year. Take the chance to go out and experience some new things, experience other points of view, and just to get to know a little bit about this little pale blue dot that we have. Um, yeah, like there's just in a generation, nobody's going to remember 99.99% of us. So I mean, we've got this one chance to make something out of it. So, do with it what you can. Don't let yourself be 90 laying in a bed be like, I wish, I wish, I wish. Like so let me tell you the story about the time I prefer to have that last one. Like you're not gonna believe this. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story. It's been so great getting to know you better, and I'm so excited to share this with our listeners today.
Thank you. I appreciate coming on and chatting about all the stuff and things.
Thank you for listening to this conversation between Ron and I. I hope you'll check him out as the Cosmic Nomad on Instagram. If this story inspired you to want to chat and share your story of death, grief, loss, because you think in some way that a casual conversation between two new friends could help others listening, please reach out and let me know. If you're looking for support in anything to do under the umbrella of death, loss, grief, please let me know that as well. If I can't help you, I will find someone that can.